To some, SeaWorld is a wonderful and educational place to take your family and witness the magic of marine mammals like orcas and dolphins. But to many others, SeaWorld is a terrible institution that abuses highly intelligent animals for profit. I, for one, have never been a believer that any marine mammal belongs in captivity, but with recent horrific discoveries brought to my attention, I decided to do a deep dive into the world of captive orcas and other marine mammals. Recent videos have been surfacing on social media showing many different marine mammals in captivity, and the videos themselves, well, they're hard to watch. Now granted, these videos aren't just from the US, they're from all around the world in locations such as Argentina, Canada, and like I mentioned, the United States. It's abundantly clear that many marine mammals struggle in captivity and are often faced with harsh living conditions. But before we look at the situation as a whole, let's focus on the largest marine park on the planet, SeaWorld. Despite breakthrough films and massive public push to stop the entrapment of orcas and other marine mammals, SeaWorld still goes pretty strong, especially here in the US. But how bad is it really? Over the past decade, many former SeaWorld trainers and employees have spoken out about the park's mistreatment of animals, specifically orcas. Their living conditions have been referred to as nightmarish, intolerable, and disgusting. After researching SeaWorld's orca exhibits, my findings were pretty shocking. At SeaWorld San Diego, the only pool large enough for multiple orcas to fit in is the front show pool, where famous individuals like Shamu perform on the daily. Typically, these orcas spend a lot of time in smaller pools just like you're seeing here, where the fit is so tight they have to drag their back fin against the wall. I found this to be the case in every SeaWorld park, and once you step outside of SeaWorld, the situation gets even worse. Orcas are a member of the dolphin family and can grow up to 27 feet long and weigh up to 14,000 pounds. These are pelagic creatures, which means they spend their life roaming the wide open ocean, feasting on small marine mammals like sea lions, as well as fish like salmon and even squid. Large, open ocean and fast-moving marine animals have historically never done well in captivity. We've seen disasters happen in the past with animals like great white sharks, beluga whales, bottlenose dolphins, and yes, especially orcas. These creatures just aren't meant to be confined to small spaces, and when you see them stuck in small tanks just like this, it starts to make zero sense. So if we know that their living conditions aren't ideal, how is the rest of their care? Admittedly, SeaWorld takes better care of its orcas than they used to, thanks to the media watching them through a magnifying glass. One surprising fact I learned though is that the food they feed the orcas is blasted with drugs, which have the purpose of keeping the orcas relatively calm. Wild orcas have a tendency to be quite emotional, spiteful, and can show signs of major aggression. SeaWorld gives their orcas drugs that keep them calm, as well as other mixtures that I wasn't able to find more information on. Investigations in the past have also revealed the mistreatment of some orcas by their trainers. SeaWorld trainers are rarely ever actually marine biologists, and are typically just performers in the industry. Through my research, I wasn't able to pinpoint any recent allegations of abuse, but history does tend to repeat itself, which can lead us to speculate that this still goes on to some extent. Captive orcas, including the ones at SeaWorld, have also been known to show signs of poor health through their dorsal fins. Wild orcas have straight dorsal fins, as you can see here, but many captive orcas have a curved or bent dorsal fin, which researchers say is a result of little exercise and poor health. I went through and examined many different orcas that are in captivity right now, and found this to be the case most of the time. This right here is a telltale sign that these orcas are never truly fully healthy while confined to small spaces just like this. Now, potentially the biggest aspect to this whole story is the breeding of orcas. The capture of wild orcas was made illegal in 1972. However, we know through PETA investigations that this still occasionally happens around the globe. It's rare, but it still does happen. At this moment, there are roughly 54 orcas in captivity around the world, with 18 of those being in SeaWorld parks. What I found interesting is that 33 of the 54 orcas currently in captivity were captive born. So this poses the question, if we know that orcas don't truly belong in captivity, why are parks like SeaWorld still breeding them? Of course, the answer lies in the potential profit from every orca, but why hasn't this been banned yet federally? In the wild, female orcas typically breed once they reach their teen years, around the age of 13 or 14. However, SeaWorld starts this process around the age of 8 for female orcas. Mothers and calves are also separated upon birth, which is tragic enough, but when you take into account the emotional sophistication of killer whales, it's all that more heartbreaking. Orcas are the only animals on the planet with more sophisticated brain structures in the limbus system than humans. This part of the brain is responsible for emotional intelligence, which makes this separation incredibly hard for female orcas. It's also why captive orcas often suffer from depression. Altogether, the cons seem to majorly outweigh any pros for captive orcas. But what are some potential pros of keeping these animals in captivity? Well, I think the obvious answer is that it educates the public. Seeing these animals in person obviously gets people more invested to wildlife and education, as well as conservation. It can easily inspire young children to want to go into a field like marine biology. But besides for that, there's not really any outstanding pros to keeping captive marine mammals. SeaWorld these days has slowly transitioned their orca shows to more educational programs, but upon closer inspection, the abuse and mistreatment is still alive. Unfortunately, SeaWorld doesn't receive much press today about their active marine mammals. It seems to only come when either an orca dies or a trainer is killed, which fortunately has not happened since 2013. As a fact, there are only 4 recorded deaths by orca attacks, all of which have been in captivity. Now, after hearing all of this, you're probably sitting there wondering, well, what can I do to help? At the end of the day, SeaWorld is there to make money, and drastic changes won't be made until people stop attending these shows. Getting rid of captive orcas will take time. Most, if not all, would not be able to survive on their own in the wild, which means the priority has to be to stop the capture of any future orcas from the wild, as well as stop the breeding of them in captivity. And like previously mentioned, SeaWorld is only one piece of the puzzle. Other marine parks around the world are just as much at fault, including the Miami Seaquarium, maybe the most controversial marine park on the planet. And it famously housed Lolita the orca, who before her unfortunate passing in 2023 was set to be released into the wild after spending 52 years in captivity. Lolita remains one of the saddest orca stories to date. This is Shemek, which is Argentina's last surviving captive orca from the wild. He's been stuck alone in this small tank since 1992, and there are currently no plans to release him back into the wild. But of course, orcas aren't the only victims. Dolphins and whales struggle in captivity as well. Marine land in Canada is also a very hot topic at the moment. They have been proven to mistreat their captive dolphins as well. Their resident beluga whales also show major signs of discomfort and depression. More than 20 whales and dolphins have died at marine land since just 2020. It truly is hard to find any redeeming qualities of captive orcas, dolphins, or whales. Now, I don't blame most of the people who still attend shows at places like SeaWorld, Marineland, or the Miami Seaquarium because they simply don't know how bad it is behind the scenes. That's why I made this video, to spread the message about captive marine mammals. Think about it, is an hour of family fun worth 50 plus years of suffering on their end? The more people that know what goes on behind the scenes, the less will actually go watch these shows and attend these parks. Now, like always, I am super curious to hear what you guys think, so make sure to let me know in the comment section down below, and feel free to tell me any personal stories that you may have with captive marine mammals. Now, of course, you all are free to form any opinion that you want about this topic, but like I said in the beginning, I've never been a believer that any marine mammal should be kept in captivity, and that's why I made this video. I wanted to do further research and dive deeper into the world of captive marine mammals, specifically orcas and specifically at SeaWorld, so I could let you guys know what is actually going on behind the scenes. But I'll leave you guys with that final message. Until the next adventure, I'm Ray Tiller.